A homeless girl shares her last piece of bread with a lost boy in the night, unaware that he is the son of the billionaire who destroyed her family. The city lights were beginning to flicker on. Night had already fallen when Ellie emerged from the narrow alley onto the main street. 5 years old, and she already knew every corner of that neighborhood like the back of her small hand. Her steps were light, almost inaudible on the damp pavement. The cold afternoon wind made her thin coat tremble. It was too big for her skinny frame, with sleeves that hid half of her hands. A gift, a donation, maybe just something she found. To Ellie, it was simply the coat, her armor against the world. People rushed by, checking watches, holding closed umbrellas, ready for the rain that threatened to fall. No one noticed the brown-haired girl moving like a shadow among them. It was as if Ellie were invisible, a ghost merely observing life happening around her. And when you're small, she thought, people don't see you. On the corner of Lincoln Street and the main avenue, the smell of fresh bread filled her nostrils. The bakery was already closed, metal gates protecting empty display windows. But there, near the back entrance, something caught her eye. A piece of bread, left on a crate. It didn't look too old. It was a bit hard, but it was still food. Ellie looked both ways before grabbing it. Not that anyone would care. Big people rarely noticed little ones stealing crumbs. She tucked the bread into her coat pocket, feeling its comforting weight. That's when she heard it. A sob. Low and broken, as if someone were trying to hold back tears. Then another, louder, and another. Ellie stopped, tilting her head to listen better. The sound was coming from a less lit side street. Most people would have ignored it, gone on their way, pretended not to hear. Ellie wasn't like most people. She followed the sound like a detective follows clues. She turned right, then left, moving away from the noise of the avenue. The sobs grew clearer with each step. Finally, she reached a small square hidden between old buildings. On the farthest bench, a small figure was huddled. A boy. From his height, he couldn't have been much older than her. He wore clothes that looked expensive. Sneakers without a single scuff, pants without patches, a coat that was surely warmer than hers. He didn't see her approach. He was too busy trying to stop crying, rubbing his eyes with clenched fists, breathing in painful sobs. "Are you lost?" Ellie asked, stopping a few feet away. The boy jumped, startled. He looked at her with red, swollen eyes. For a moment, it seemed like he would run. Then something in his face changed. Maybe it was the fact that Ellie was just a child like him, not an intimidating adult. I can't find my dad," he said, his voice choked. He was here. And then, he was gone. Ellie moved a little closer, sitting at the other end of the bench. Not too close. She knew people needed space when they were sad. "What's your name?" "Theo," he answered, sniffling. "I'm Ellie." A moment of silence passed between them. It wasn't an uncomfortable silence, just a moment where two children studied each other. "Are you hungry?" Ellie asked, remembering the treasure in her pocket. Theo hesitated but nodded slightly. Ellie took the piece of bread from her pocket and carefully broke it in half. She offered the larger piece to the boy. Her small fingers stretched out towards him, holding the simple gift as if it were gold. "I can't," Theo said, shaking his head. "My dad says I shouldn't take food from strangers, but I'm not a stranger. I'm Ellie, remember?" She pushed the bread toward him. "Besides, strangers don't share food, they steal food." Something about that logic seemed to make sense to Theo. He took the piece of bread carefully, as if it were something precious. He took a small bite, then a bigger one. "Thank you," he mumbled between chews. Ellie bit into her own half, savoring every crumb. They ate in silence, sitting side by side on the cold bench, two children alone in the city's twilight. "Is my dad going to find me?" Theo asked after a while, his voice small and insecure. "Dads always find you," Ellie answered, though she wasn't sure if that was true. As if her words had conjured the man, a shout cut through the square's air. "Theo?" "Theo!" A tall man appeared, running into the square. His expensive suit was wrinkled, his tie loosened, his hair disheveled. He looked like he had run a marathon. His eyes scanned the area frantically until they landed on the two children on the bench. "Dad!" Theo shouted, jumping off the bench and running towards the man. The father knelt, hugging his son tightly, lifting him off the ground. Ellie watched from a distance, man still seated, chewing her last piece of bread. I thought... The man couldn't finish the sentence, his voice thick with emotion. Are you okay? Are you hurt? Theo shook his head. I was scared, Dad. But Ellie gave me bread. Only then did the man notice the girl sitting on the bench. Still holding Theo, he approached her. Up close, Ellie could see that his eyes were the same shade of brown as Theo's, but more tired, with lines at the corners. Are you Ellie? He asked. His voice softer now. She nodded, saying nothing. Thank you for staying with my son, he said, kneeling to be at her height. I'm Vincent. Were you looking after Theo? I just gave him bread, Ellie replied, shrugging. He was crying. Vincent looked at his son, then at the girl. There was something in his eyes, surprise perhaps, or confusion. Where are your parents, Ellie? The question hung in the air. Ellie didn't answer. She just looked at him with her calm, ancient eyes, too old for a 5-year-old. Is Theo going to be okay now? She asked, changing the subject. Vincent blinked, as if coming out of a trance. Yes, he'll be fine. Thanks to you. He reached into his pocket and took out his wallet. Ellie watched the movement with attentive eyes. I'd like to... Vincent began, but stopped when he saw the expression on the girl's face. It wasn't greed or expectation, as he might have expected. It was just waiting, as if she had seen that gesture many times before. He put the wallet away. Do you need help getting home? He asked instead. No, Ellie answered, hopping off the bench. I know the way. She started to walk away, her steps as silent as before. Bye, Ellie, Theo called, waving over his father's shoulder. Thanks for the bread. Ellie turned one last time, a small smile lighting up her face. She waved back and then disappeared around the corner, melting into the city's shadows. Vincent stood there with Theo in his arms, watching the spot where the girl had vanished. There was something about that encounter, something important he couldn't define, like a word on the tip of his tongue. Let's go home, son, he said finally, adjusting Theo in his arms. As they walked away from the square, Vincent had no way of knowing that this brief encounter would change his life forever. The engine of the BMW purred softly as Vincent drove through the city's illuminated streets. In the back seat, Theo was unusually quiet, his small face reflected in the rearview mirror with every passing streetlight. The city lights drew shadows and flashes inside the car, an intermittent rhythm that accompanied Vincent's thoughts. Dad? Theo's voice broke the silence. Yes, son. Ellie doesn't have a home like ours, does she? The question caught Vincent by surprise. He adjusted his hands on the steering wheel, searching for words. Why do you think that? Her clothes were old, and she knew where to find food on the street. Vincent swallowed hard. Children see what adults prefer to ignore. I don't know where she lives, Theo, but she seemed to know how to take care of herself. Silence again. Vincent used the red light to look back. Theo had that expression, eyebrows furrowed, lower lip slightly pushed out, that indicated his mind was working on something important. How did you lose me today, Dad? The question landed like a stone in Vincent's chest. The memory of that afternoon came back all too vividly. They were at Central Park. Theo was playing on the slide while Vincent sat on a nearby bench. Then the phone rang. It was Mark, his CFO. Vincent, we have a problem with the Chinese investors. They're threatening to back out of the deal. Vincent stood up, moving a few steps away to hear better. What's the problem now? I thought we had settled everything in the last video conference. They claim they didn't receive the complete documentation. They're implying we're hiding something. That's ridiculous. We sent everything last week. The conversation dragged on. Vincent gestured, paced back and forth, completely absorbed in the millions that were at stake. Numbers, clauses, deadlines. His mind dove into the corporate world, leaving the park and Theo behind. When he finally hung up, 15 minutes later, he turned to the slide. Theo wasn't there. He looked at the swings, at the carousel, at the jungle gym. Nothing. Theo? He called, still calm. Theo, where are you? Silence. Theo. Panic came like a wave, washing away any trace of composure. Vincent ran through the park, shouting his son's name. He asked other children, parents, nannies. No one had seen a 5-year-old boy in a blue coat and white sneakers. Vincent called the police. He described Theo, his clothes, his light brown hair, and his anxious eyes. A search was organized. The park, the adjacent streets, the nearby shops, nothing. It was when he decided to expand the search on his own, running through the streets like a madman, that he found Theo in the square with Ellie. "Dad!" Theo's voice brought him back to the present. The light was green. A car behind them honked. "Sorry," Vincent said, accelerating. Then, answering his son's question, "I got distracted with work. Theo, it was a terrible mistake. I should have never taken my eyes off you." "It's okay," Theo said, with that ease that children have for forgiving. "I saw a kitten and followed it. Then, I didn't know how to get back." Vincent felt a lump in his throat. His son was almost lost forever because he couldn't hang up the phone. Because a business deal seemed more important than paying attention to his own child. "I liked Ellie," Theo continued, oblivious to his father's thoughts. "She shared her bread with me, even though she didn't know me. Can I give her one of my toys, Dad?" Vincent tried to answer, but his voice failed him. He cleared his throat and tried again. Let's think about that tomorrow, okay? It's late now." "She wasn't scared," Theo went on. "Not even when it was dark. I think she's brave." "Yes," Vincent agreed. She seemed brave. The girl's face appeared in his mind. Dark, serious eyes, a poorly cut haircut, clothes that were too big, and a dignity that didn't match her age or size. A child alone on the street at dusk. Something ached inside Vincent, a persistent discomfort, like a pebble in his shoe that he couldn't remove. "Dad, can we look for Ellie tomorrow? I want to thank her for the bread." Vincent didn't answer immediately. What could he say? That they would probably never see that girl again. That children like her disappeared into the city's shadows, invisible to people like them. "We'll see, son." He parked in the garage of the luxurious building where they lived. The doorman greeted them with a polite smile. In the mirrored elevator, Vincent saw his reflection, a wrinkled suit, deep dark circles, disheveled hair. Beside him, Theo looked thoughtful, unusually serious for a child his age. At home, the nightly routine proceeded as usual. Bath, dinner, brushing teeth, a bedtime story. But something was different. Vincent felt as if a thin layer of ice had cracked beneath his feet, revealing deep and unknown waters below. After Theo fell asleep, Vincent sat in the armchair beside his son's bed, watching his serene face. How could he have gotten so distracted? How could he have risked what was most precious to him for a work call? "The bread girl," Theo murmured in his sleep, turning over in bed. Vincent felt that discomfort grow inside him. Why did that encounter affect him so much? A poor girl sharing food with his lost son? A simple gesture, perhaps, but one filled with something that seemed to have evaporated from his own life. Kindness without a reason, goodness without calculation. When was the last time he had done something like that? When was the last time he had looked at someone, really looked, and seen more than an obstacle or a tool on his path to success? The truth hit him like a punch. At some point in his climb to the top, Vincent had lost more than time. He had lost his ability to connect, to see beyond transactions, to feel beyond what was useful or profitable. He had lost his humanity. And it took a street kid with a piece of stale bread for him to start realizing it. The morning arrived with the relentless clarity that follows sleepless nights. Vincent sat on the edge of his bed, rubbing his face with his hands. His phone was already blinking with notifications, urgent emails, unread messages, meeting reminders. The world didn't stop, even when something inside him had shifted. "Cancel my appointments today," he said into the phone to his assistant, ignoring the surprise in her voice. In 15 years, Vincent had never cancelled an entire day of work. After dropping Theo off at school, "Are you going to look for Ellie today, Dad?" Vincent drove to the place where he had found his son the night before. The square looked different in the daylight, smaller, less mysterious, an ordinary place that now carried a special meaning. He sat on the same bench where Ellie and Theo had shared the bread. Where to begin? The city was huge, and he had only a name, Ellie, and the image of a small girl in clothes that were too big. He started with the bakery. It was a logical start. The girl had found bread there. A girl. 5 years old, dark, poorly cut hair, a coat that's too big. The baker frowned, thinking, "Oh, I think I've seen her. Sometimes she shows up when we're closing. Never steals, you know, just looks at the leftover food. Do you know where she lives?" The man shrugged. "On the street, probably. There are a lot of people like that around here." Vincent continued his search. He asked in shops, at newsstands, to doormen of buildings. Some knew Ellie by sight. Others had never noticed the girl. There are so many street kids around, it's hard to notice them all. Each answer was like a small blow. How could they not notice? How had he himself never noticed? After hours of walking through the neighborhood, Vincent was about to give up when he spotted a small figure sitting on the sidewalk near a convenience store. Dark hair falling over her eyes, the same oversized coat Ellie. She was drawing on the sidewalk with a piece of colored chalk, completely absorbed in her world. Vincent approached slowly, afraid of scaring her. "Hi, Ellie." She looked up, alert. Her eyes recognized him immediately, but her body tensed instinctively. "You're Theo's dad," she said. It wasn't a question. "That's right, Vincent." She didn't reply, just looked at him with those ancient eyes. Can I sit for a bit?" he asked, pointing to the sidewalk next to her. Ellie shrugged, which Vincent took as a yes. He sat down, feeling awkward in his expensive suit on the rough sidewalk. "Is Theo okay?" she asked, going back to her drawing. "He is. He talks about you a lot. He wanted to thank you for the bread." A near smile crossed the girl's face. "It was nothing." They were silent for a moment. Vincent watched her drawing, simple figures of people holding hands under what looked like a smiling sun. "Ellie, where do you live?" The question hung in the air for so long that Vincent thought she wouldn't answer. Then, without looking up from her drawing, "In places." "What places?" She shrugged again. "Depends on the day. Sometimes at the shelter on 27th Street, when there's a spot. Sometimes under the park bridge. In the winter, we try to stay at the subway station on the Blue Line because it's warmer. Me, my mom, and my brother Sam." She drew another small figure next to the others. "He's one and cries a lot at night. People don't like it." Vincent felt his stomach drop. An entire family living like this while he worried about Chinese investors and million-dollar deals. "Where's your mom now?" "Looking for work. She's always looking, but nobody wants to hire you when you don't have an address to put on the form." Ellie said this without bitterness, just stating a fact. "And your dad?" "Never met him." Another pause. Vincent tried to process it all. The simplicity with which Ellie spoke of such a hard life left him speechless. "Guys, not so bad," she said, as if reading his thoughts. "Sam's funny when he's not sick, and my mum tells good stories before we go to sleep." Vincent took a deep breath, trying to control the emotion welling up in his chest. "Ellie, I wanted to help you and your family." She finally looked at him, suspicious. Because you helped my son when he was lost. Because you shared your food with him. Because..." Vincent paused, searching for the right words. "Because it's the right thing to do." Ellie studied him with a gaze that seemed to pierce his soul. Big people usually want something in return. The comment, coming from such a small child, was like a stab. "Joyce, I don't want anything in return. I just wanted to, help." She considered this for a moment, then went back to drawing. "My mum will be here soon. She told me to wait here." Vincent nodded, understanding the message. He needed to talk to the mother. They waited together in a silence that gradually became more comfortable. Ellie kept drawing, occasionally looking at him as if trying to solve a complicated puzzle. Almost an hour later, a young woman turned the corner, carrying a baby wrapped in a thin blanket. She looked exhausted, with deep dark circles under her eyes and her hair carelessly tied up. But there was a dignity in her posture, a determination in her gaze that resembled her daughter. "Ellie!" Her voice tensed when she saw her daughter sitting next to a stranger in a suit. She quickened her pace, protective. "Mom, this is Theo's dad," Ellie said, standing up. "The boy I told you about." The woman stopped, looking at Vincent cautiously. "Sarah," she introduced herself, adjusting the baby in her arms. "Thank you for bringing my daughter back yesterday." "Actually," Vincent said, standing up as well, "it was your daughter who brought my son back to me." He explained what had happened the night before, how Theo had gotten lost, how Ellie had stayed with him, shared her bread, how her simple kindness had touched something inside him. "I'd like to help you," he said, finally getting to the point. "Your daughter did something important for me and my son." Sarah pressed her lips together, suspicious. "We don't need charity." "It's not charity," Vincent replied. "It's gratitude." The baby started to cry. Sarah rocked him gently, whispering words of comfort. "He's hungry," Ellie said, touching her little brother's cheek. "And cold." Vincent felt something break inside him. "Please," he insisted, "let me help. Just come with me. Let's get something to eat and talk." Sarah hesitated, looking at her children, then at Vincent. The exhaustion in her eyes was palpable. "All right," she said finally. "We can talk." In a nearby cafe, Vincent watched in silence as Sarah fed the baby with some baby food he had ordered. Ellie ate a sandwich, trying not to show how hungry she was. The stories Sarah told between bites, of how she lost her job when she was pregnant, how she couldn't get a spot in shelters with 2 children, how she tried to keep her kids clean and fed despite everything, hit Vincent like physical blows. "I want to rent a house for you," he said finally, "a safe place where you can stay. Food, clothes, whatever you need until you're on your feet." Sarah put her fork down, her eyes fixed on him. "Why? You don't even know us." Vincent looked at Ellie, who was playing with Sam, making the baby smile. "Because yesterday your son was lost and today he's safe," Sarah said, noticing the direction of his gaze. "Yes," Vincent agreed. "But it could have been different. If Ellie hadn't stayed with him, if she wasn't the kind of person who stops to help, anything could have happened." He took a deep breath. "Because your daughter saved what I love most, and that's priceless." That same afternoon, Vincent rented a small 2-bedroom house in a quiet neighborhood. It wasn't luxurious, but it was clean, safe, and warm. He arranged for beds, blankets, a refrigerator full of food. He bought clothes for everyone, a crib for Sam, toys for Ellie. When he showed them the house, Sarah couldn't hold back her tears. "I don't understand," she said, looking at the small but functional kitchen, at the bedrooms with windows that let the sun in. "Why would someone do this for strangers?" Vincent watched Ellie explore her new room, touching the bed as if it was something magical. "Maybe because I needed to remember that there are more important things than meetings and deals," he answered, more to himself than to her. "Maybe because your daughter taught me something I had forgotten." "What?" Vincent smiled, watching Ellie lie down on the new bed, testing the mattress with an expression of pure contentment. How to be human again. The sound of small, hurried footsteps echoed down the hallway as Theo ran into the living room. Vincent was sitting on the sofa, reviewing some papers he had brought from work, a cup of now cold coffee forgotten on the coffee table. Dad, how was your day?" Theo fired off the words, his face lit up by a smile. Vincent set the documents aside and opened his arms. Theo didn't hesitate to jump into his lap, something that had become more frequent in the last few days. Since the incident at the park, Vincent had been making a conscious effort to be more present. "It was a different day, son, very different." "How different?" "Good different or bad different?" Theo tilted his head, curious. Vincent settled his son on his lap, searching for the right words. How to explain what he himself was still processing. "Remember you asked me about Ellie yesterday, the girl who shared her bread with you?" Theo's eyes widened. "You found her?" "You found the bread girl." Vincent couldn't help but smile at the nickname. "I did. I spent the day looking for her. At your work." "No, son. I took the day off." Theo seemed genuinely shocked by this information. His father never took days off, unless it was an official holiday or a vacation planned months in advance. "Just to look for Ellie?" "Yes, I wanted to. Thank her for staying with you when you were lost." Theo nodded, as if that made perfect sense. "So, was she okay? Where does she live? Does she have a lot of toys?" Can I visit her? Vincent took a deep breath, thinking about how to explain the situation to a 5-year-old. He didn't want to scare Theo, but he didn't want to hide the reality either. Ellie was okay, yes, but she didn't have a house like ours, Theo. What do you mean? Remember you said her clothes were old and that she knew where to find food on the street. Vincent waited for Theo to nod. That's because Ellie, her mom, and her baby brother didn't have a house to live in. They slept in different places every day. Theo was quiet for a moment, his little face serious as he processed the information. Like when we go camping. A little like that, but without the fun of camping. Without the comfortable tent, without the tasty snacks, without being able to go home afterward. Theo's eyes filled with concern. But it's cold at night. Yes, it is. And what if it rains? They get wet. That's sad, Dad. Vincent felt a tightness in his chest. The simplicity with which his son understood the world's injustice sometimes left him speechless. It is sad, Theo, and that's why I did something today. What? I found a house for Ellie and her family. A place where they can be safe and warm. I bought food, clothes, and everything they need for now. Theo jumped from his father's lap, his expression a mixture of surprise and joy. A real house, with beds and everything? Yes, with beds, a bathroom, a kitchen. Everything a house needs to have, like ours. Not as big as ours, but comfortable and safe. Theo started jumping around the room, excited. Can we visit? I want to show Ellie my drawings and my toy cars. Can I bring one for her? Does she have toys now? Vincent smiled at his son's enthusiasm. I bought some toys for her, yes. And we can visit them tomorrow if you want. I'm sure Ellie would be happy to see you. Tomorrow, why not now? Because now it's time for dinner, a bath, and sleep. It's getting late. Theo pouted in disappointment, but didn't insist. Instead, he ran to his room, shouting that he was going to make a special drawing for Ellie. During dinner, bath time, and bedtime, Theo talked about nothing else. He wanted to know what Ellie's baby brother was like, if her mom told bedtime stories, if Ellie went to school. Vincent answered patiently, realizing that his son was genuinely interested in his new friend's life. The next morning, Theo woke up earlier than usual, already dressed and with a backpack prepared. What did you put in there? Vincent asked, surprised by his son's initiative. Things for Ellie, Theo replied mysteriously. It's a surprise. After breakfast, Vincent drove to the small house he had rented for Sarah and her children. On the way, they stopped at a pastry shop to buy a cake, personally chosen by Theo, chocolate with strawberry frosting. Everybody likes chocolate, he explained, very seriously, and strawberry goes with chocolate. When they arrived at the house, Vincent noticed the new curtains in the windows and the potted plants in the small front garden. Sarah was already making the place a home. They had barely rung the doorbell when the door opened. Ellie was there, wearing a new dress Vincent had bought the day before. Her hair was combed and tied back in a simple but neat ponytail. She looked different, more like an ordinary child and less like a little adult carrying the weight of the world. Theo, she exclaimed, a genuine smile lighting up her face. Ellie. Theo almost dropped the cake in his haste to hug his friend. Vincent caught the box just in time, smiling at the scene. The children hugged like old friends who hadn't seen each other in years, not like acquaintances of only 2 days. Sarah appeared at the door with Sam in her arms. The baby looked rosier and more alert, his curious little eyes watching the visitors. Good morning, she greeted, looking more rested than the day before. Please, come in. The house was simple but welcoming. Sarah had arranged everything carefully, and the place smelled good of fresh coffee and homemade bread. We brought cake, Theo announced, pointing to the box in his father's hands. Cake, Sam clapped his hands, babbling excitedly. Your brother talks, Theo asked, impressed. A few words, Ellie answered proudly. He's smart. Sarah set the table for the cake while the children settled in the small living room. Theo opened his backpack, taking out a carefully folded drawing. I made this for you, he said, handing the paper to Ellie. She unfolded it carefully. It was a colorful drawing of 2 children holding hands under a big yellow sun. One had light brown hair like Theo's, the other dark hair like Ellie's. Underneath, in clumsy letters, "Thanks for the bread." Ellie looked at the drawing for a long moment. "I love it," she said finally, her voice low and sincere. "I'll keep it forever." Vincent and Sarah exchanged glances, both touched by the scene. "Let's have some cake," Sarah suggested, breaking the moment. "And then you can play in the backyard." While the children delighted in the chocolate cake, Vincent and Sarah talked in low voices in the kitchen. "I got a job interview for tomorrow," she told him, a hint of hope in her voice. "At a bookstore a few blocks from here. I can walk." "That's great," Vincent said. "And Sam?" "There's a community daycare in the neighborhood. I'll talk to them. And I want to enroll Ellie in school as soon as possible. She's smart, a quick learner." Vincent nodded, realizing how determined Sarah was to rebuild her family's life. "So if you need anything for the interviews, in clothes and transportation, someone to watch the kids, just let me know." "Thank you. You've already done so much. More than I can ever thank you for." A joyful shout from the garden interrupted the conversation. They went to the back door to see what was happening. Theo and Ellie were running on the grass, laughing their heads off as they tossed a ball that Vincent hadn't seen before. Sam was sitting on a blanket spread on the grass, clapping and laughing at the older children's game. "Where did the ball come from?" Vincent asked. Theo stopped running, breathing heavily. "From my backpack. I brought it for us to play with." "He brought other toys too," Ellie added. "Cars and building blocks. And coloring pages," Theo completed. "For you and Sam." The day passed with a lightness that Vincent hadn't felt in a long time. He and Sarah sat in chairs in the garden, watching the children play. From time to time, they talked about simple things. The weather, the flowers Sarah wanted to plant, the stories Ellie made up to entertain her brother. At one point, Theo convinced Vincent to join an impromptu soccer game. Soon, Sarah was also dragged into the game, with Sam watching and laughing on the blanket. "Look, Dad, Ellie's good at soccer," Theo shouted after the girl easily dribbled past Vincent. "I used to play in the square with other kids," she explained, kicking the ball to Theo. When Sam started to get fussy, it was time for a break. Sarah went to prepare a snack, and Vincent offered to help. The children stayed in the garden, now building a track with the building blocks for the cars Theo had brought. In the kitchen, Vincent watched Sarah prepare sandwiches with the ingredients he had bought the day before. "Ellie seems different today," he commented. Sarah smiled, a smile that lit up her tired face. She slept well for the first time in months. No scary noises, no cold, no hunger. It's amazing how a night of peaceful sleep can transform a child. Vincent thought about how many nights of peaceful sleep he took for granted. "And you?" "I slept well too," she admitted, "but I still wake up at every noise, expecting someone to send us away. It's going to take time to get used to the idea that we have a safe place now." The snack was served in the garden, an impromptu picnic that delighted the children. Sam tried his first cheese sandwich, to everyone's delight. "He's never had a sandwich like this," Ellie explained. "It's just baby food and soft bread." After the snack, as the children went back to playing, Vincent noticed how different Theo seemed. More relaxed, more talkative, more cheerful, a far cry from the shy, sometimes anxious child he knew. "Your son seems to be having fun," Sarah commented, following his gaze. "I've never seen him so at ease with another child," Vincent replied. "He's usually reserved, has trouble making friends." "Ellie has that effect on people. She's always been like that, friendly and caring, even when we were in the worst situations." Vincent watched the girl helping Theo build a bridge with the blocks, patiently explaining how to make the structure sturdy. "She's special." "Yes, she is," Sarah agreed, pride evident in her voice. "And your Theo is too. Look how gentle he is with Sam." Indeed, whenever the baby crawled towards them, Theo would stop what he was doing to show him a car or make a funny face that made Sam laugh. The afternoon passed too quickly. As the sun began to set, Vincent realized it was time to go. "Shall we have to go, Theo? It's getting late." "Oh no, Dad. Just a little longer, please. You have school tomorrow, remember? And we need to have dinner and a bath." Theo made a disappointed face that almost made Vincent give in. "Can we come back another day?" he asked, hopeful. Vincent looked at Sarah, who nodded discreetly. "Of course you can." if it's okay with Sarah and Ellie. You're always welcome, Sarah said. Will you come back tomorrow? Ellie asked Theo, her voice a mix of hope and uncertainty. I have school tomorrow, Theo replied sadly. But after school, can we come, Dad? Vincent smiled. We can try, but I can't promise. Maybe the weekend would be better. The children hugged goodbye, a long, tight hug. Thanks for sharing the bread with me, Theo whispered in Ellie's ear. Thanks for sharing your toys with me, she replied. On the way back home, Theo couldn't stop talking about Ellie, Sam, and everything they had done that day. His enthusiasm was contagious, making Vincent smile as he drove. Dad, can I ask a question? Of course, son. Why do some people not have a home to live in? The question caught Vincent by surprise. He searched for an honest answer, but one suitable for a 5-year-old. It's complicated, Theo. Sometimes people lose their jobs or get sick and can't pay the rent. Sometimes bad things happen that aren't their fault, like Ellie and her mum. Yes, like them. Theo was silent for a moment, thoughtful. I'm glad you found Ellie and gave her a house, he said finally. It was the best day of my life. Vincent felt a lump in his throat. For me too, son. Or, for me too. That night, after putting Theo to bed, Vincent stood watching his son fall asleep. The serene little face, the messy hair on the pillow, the quiet breathing. The image of Ellie sleeping on the streets still haunted him. But now there was comfort in knowing she was safe. Something had changed inside him in those 2 days. An awakening, a new awareness of the world around him and his place in it. Vincent realized that, in trying to help Ellie and her family, he was actually finding a part of himself he had lost a long time ago. The gratitude he felt wasn't just for what Ellie had done for Theos, but for what she, without knowing it, was doing for him, teaching him to see again, to feel again, to be human again. Vincent gazed at the city from the wide window of his 30th floor office, skyscrapers of glass and concrete, tiny cars like ants down below, hurried people following their routines. The empire he had helped build over 15 years, it had always been his priority, his pride, his identity, until now. On his desk, the phone rang for the 3rd time. His assistant, Claire, sounded increasingly worried. Mr. Harmon, the investors are waiting in the conference room. The meeting started 15 minutes ago. Vincent didn't take his eyes off the view. Cancel it. Pardon? Cancel the meeting, Claire. Reschedule for next week. A perplexed silence from the other end of the line. Sir, these investors came from Japan specifically for this meeting. Mr. Peterson is already furious about the delay and tell Peterson I had a family emergency. Vincent finally turned, grabbing his jacket from the back of the chair. In fact, cancel all my meetings for today. And tomorrow too. But sir, the quarterly presentation, it can wait. Vincent hung up before Claire could protest again. He picked up the leather briefcase on his desk, hesitated, and then left it where it was. Instead, he only pocketed his wallet and keys. On his way out, he passed by the finance department, where Mark, his CFO, intercepted him with a folder of documents. Vincent, I need your signature on the reports before they're sent out, and we need to discuss the strategy for the meeting with the Chinese next week. Leave the papers with Claire, I'm leaving. Mark's eyes widened in confusion. Leaving? Now? In the middle of a Wednesday afternoon? Vincent nodded, not slowing his pace toward the elevator. But where are you going? A small smile appeared on Vincent's face. To pick up my son from school. Mark's confused face was the last thing Vincent saw before the elevator doors closed. 20 minutes later, Vincent parked his car in front of Westlake Elementary School. It was the first time in over a year that he had picked up Theo personally. Usually, the nanny or the driver handled this duty. Sitting behind the wheel, Vincent watched other parents arriving, chatting in small groups as they waited for the bell. Mothers and fathers who he supposed did this every day. Who knew the names of their children's friends? Who knew who their favorite teacher was? Who heard about drawings and lessons and small daily victories? What did he know about Theo's school life? Almost nothing. He signed report cards, attended mandatory meetings, sent checks for field trips. But the daily details, the little stories, he missed those, always too busy with spreadsheets and contracts. The bell rang. Children began to pour out of the gates in noisy little groups. Vincent got out of the car, feeling strangely nervous. Would Theo be happy to see him, or just confused by the break in routine? Theo appeared with his Avengers backpack, talking to another boy. When he saw his father standing by the gate, his eyes widened in surprise, and then a smile lit up his face. "Dad!" Vincent felt something inside him melt as Theo ran towards him, throwing himself into his arms with total abandon. "Hey, champ," he said, hugging his son. "I thought we could spend the afternoon together. What do you think?" Theo pulled back, looking at his father with a mixture of surprise and joy. "Really? What about your work?" The question, so innocent, hit Vincent like a punch. His 5-year-old son already knew that his father's work always came first. "Work can wait," he replied, ruffling Theo's hair. "Today is Father-Son Day." In the car, Theo didn't stop talking, as if he feared the moment would end if he paused. He talked about the science class where they saw a video about sea turtles, about how he got all the words right in the spelling test, about the new boy who had joined the class. Vincent listened, asking questions, realizing how many details of his son's life he missed daily. "Where are we going, Dad?" Vincent hadn't planned anything specific. "Where would you like to go?" Theo's eyes sparkled at the possibility of choice. "Can we go to the amusement park? The one with the water roller coaster?" "Of course, yes we can." The park wasn't very crowded on a Wednesday afternoon. Vincent bought passes for all the rides, cotton candy, hot dogs. He followed Theo from one side to the other, surprised by his son's boundless energy. They rode the water roller coaster together, Vincent holding Theo firmly as they plunged down the free fall. The boy's shout of joy, the way he clung to his father when the water drenched them, the uncontrollable laughter afterward, simple moments that Vincent realized he had been missing while spending hours in endless meetings. "That was the best ride ever," Theo exclaimed, dripping wet but radiant. Later, sitting on a bench with ice creams melting in cones, Theo suddenly became serious. "Dad, are you going to work late again today?" The question caught Vincent off guard. "No, son, not today." "And tomorrow?" Vincent looked into those hopeful eyes and made a decision. "Not tomorrow either. Actually, I was thinking we could do more things together. Maybe I can pick you up from school more often, or take you to work one day if you want to see where Daddy stays, like a special day. More than that, like a normal thing. Fathers and sons spend time together. That's how it should be." Theo licked his ice cream, thoughtful. "That would be nice. Jimmy's mom always picks him up. And Lucas's dad plays soccer with him in the park on weekends." Each example was like a small accusation. How many moments had Vincent missed, traded for meetings that, in the end, changed nothing fundamental in his life? "You know, Theo, sometimes adults get confused about what's really important," Vincent said, choosing his words carefully. "It's how we think some things can't wait, when in fact it's other things we shouldn't postpone." Theo frowned, trying to understand. "Like what?" "Like watching you grow up, like knowing who your friends are, like being there when you need me." "Like when I got lost?" Vincent swallowed hard. "Yes, exactly like that day." Theo considered this for a moment, then smiled. "I'm glad you're here today, Dad." "Me too, son, me too." On the way back home, with Theo almost asleep in the back seat, clutching a teddy bear Vincent had won for him in a ball toss game, the phone rang. It was Mark, probably with some corporate emergency. Vincent turned off the phone without answering. In the rearview mirror, he could see Theo looking out the window, sleepy but content. His son, his true legacy. Not the buildings, not the contracts, not the bank accounts. "Dad?" "Yes, son." "Can we visit Ellie again? I want to show her my new bear." Vincent smiled. "Of course we can. How about on the weekend?" "Promise." Vincent felt the weight of that simple word. How many promises had he broken before? Missed school meetings, cancelled games, weekends, sacrificed for business trips. "I promise, Theo. This weekend, we'll visit Ellie and her family." "Yay!" Theo hugged the bear tighter. After a moment, he added, "Dad?" "Yes." "Thanks for today." It was the best day. Vincent felt his eyes sting. "For me too, son, for me too." Saturday dawned with a clear sky and a gentle sun, perfect for the promised visit. Vincent was preparing breakfast when Theo appeared in the kitchen, already dressed and with his hair still damp from the shower. "Good morning, Dad." The excitement in his voice was palpable. "We're going to see Ellie today, remember?" Vincent smiled, flipping the pancakes he was making. "Of course, I remember. After breakfast, we can go." Theo sat at the table, swinging his legs that didn't reach the floor. "Dad?" "Yes?" "I think we should bring a present for Ellie." Vincent placed the plate of pancakes in front of his son. "A present? Why?" Theo picked up his fork, thoughtful, his expression suddenly serious. "Because she doesn't have many toys, right? When I went there, she really liked my cars and blocks." Vincent felt something warm his chest. Theo's sensitivity to Ellie's situation surprised him. Children, he thought, often see the world with a clarity that adults lose along the way. "You're right," he agreed, sitting down with his own portion of pancakes. "That's a great idea. What do you think she would like?" Theo took a bite, chewing slowly as he considered the question with the seriousness of someone deciding the fate of a nation. "Something she can share with Sam," he concluded finally. "Something for both of them." After breakfast, they drove to the mall. The toy store was a maze of colors and sounds, with shelves reaching the ceiling, packed with options that would make any child dizzy with possibilities. "Look, Dad." Theo pointed to a section with building blocks. "Ellie's good at building things." They looked at games, books, dolls, cars. Theo tested each option, imagining if Ellie would like it, if Sam could play too, if it would last. His seriousness in the task made Vincent smile. Finally, Theo stopped in front of a large box. "This one," he said with conviction. "Say it's perfect." It was a foldable puppet theater, with 6 different puppets representing fairy tale characters and space to store everything in a compact case. It came with a booklet of stories, but also allowed for creating their own narratives. "Ellie can tell stories to Sam," Theo explained. "Gus, and when he gets older, he can help with the puppets too." Vincent looked at his son with admiration. "That's an excellent choice, Theo." When they arrived at Ellie's house, they were greeted by the girl herself, who opened the door before they even rang the bell, as if she had been waiting at the window. "You came," she exclaimed, her face lighting up with a smile. Theo held the gift-wrapped box, almost bigger than himself, staggering slightly under its weight. "We brought you a present," he announced proudly. "I picked it out." Ellie's eyes widened. "A present? For me?" The genuine surprise in her voice, as if the very idea of receiving something was extraordinary, made Vincent feel a lump in his throat. Sarah appeared behind her daughter, with Sam on her hip. "Please, come in," she invited, looking more rested and confident than last time. "I just made lemonade." In the small living room, Theo insisted that Ellie open the present immediately. She did so with extreme care, as if the wrapping paper itself were a treasure. When she saw the puppet theater, her expression went from astonishment to joy. "Is it for me and Sam?" she asked, looking at Theo, then at Vincent, as if she couldn't believe it. "Yes," Theo confirmed. "You can tell stories, and there are princes and witches and a dragon." Ellie touched the puppets reverently, trying one on her small hand. "I've never had anything like this," she whispered. Vincent noticed Sarah discreetly wiping away a tear. Sam, sensing the excitement, reached his little arms out for the colorful puppets, cooing excitedly. "Can we play outside?" Ellie asked, looking at her mother. "On the sidewalk with the puppets?" "Of course, sweetie," Sarah replied. "Take the lemonade too." The children rushed out, carrying the theater and a few puppets. Vincent helped Sarah carry glasses and the pitcher to the small porch, from where they could watch the children play. "You didn't have to," Sarah said quietly. "You've already done so much." "It was Theo's idea," Vincent replied. "He really cares about Ellie." On the sidewalk in front of the house, Theo and Ellie had set up the little theater. A small audience of Sam and some stuffed animals watched as the two took turns in roles, making funny voices and improvising stories about friendly dragons and adventurous princesses. The children's laughter filled the morning air. After some time, tired of the puppets, they discovered a box of colored chalk that Sarah had bought for Ellie. Soon, the sidewalk turned into a canvas, with drawings of castles, smiling clouds, and figures holding hands under a radiant sun. "I'm going to draw the four of us," Ellie announced, concentrating on her work. "And Sam," Theo reminded her. "Don't forget Sam." "I would never forget Sam," Ellie assured him, adding a smaller figure next to the others. Vincent watched in silence from the porch. There was something deeply moving about the scene. Two children from such different worlds, united by a simple, pure bond. There were no judgments, no barriers. Just the present moment, filled with colored chalk and made-up stories. "They're amazing, aren't they?" Sarah commented, sitting next to him. "How they can just exist without carrying the weight of yesterday or the worry of tomorrow." Vincent nodded, unable to express in words what he felt. He watched how Theo included Sam in everything, how Ellie cared for her brother with a maturity beyond her years, how the children created entire universes with nothing but chalk and imagination. "Dad, look, I drew you," Theo shouted, pointing to a tall figure in a suit. Vincent waved, smiling. It was then that he realized he was truly smiling. Not the polite smile of business meetings, not the tired smile at the end of a long day. A genuine smile that came from some deep, long-forgotten place inside him. The children invented a game of jumping on colored squares. Their laughter echoed down the quiet street. Sam clapped, watching the older ones with admiration. There was a perfect simplicity to that moment, a pure joy that didn't depend on status or possessions or achievements. Vincent felt something break inside him, not a painful rupture, but the fall of a wall, as if some hardened, closed-off part of his being had finally opened, allowing light to enter again. This was it, he understood, being human again. It wasn't about work, or success, or accumulation. It was about those small connections, the sincere laughter of a child, the silent generosity of sharing the little one has, the ability to see beauty in chalk drawings that the rain would soon wash away. Sitting there, watching the children play under the gentle sun, Vincent felt for the first time in years truly present. Not divided between past worries and future anxieties, but completely there in that moment, with his whole soul, and it was enough, more than enough. It was everything. The following weeks brought a new routine for Vincent and Theo. Visits to Ellie's house became frequent, usually on weekends, but sometimes on weekdays too, when Vincent managed to leave the office early. The friendship between the children flourished, and a comfortable familiarity began to settle between the adults. Sarah had gotten the job at the bookstore. She worked 4 days a week, while Sam was at the community daycare. Ellie had started attending the local school. Little by little, the family rebuilt their life, brick by brick, day by day. On a Friday night, Vincent and Theo arrived at Ellie's house with pizza and ice cream. It had become a small but significant tradition, having dinner together to celebrate the end of the week. "We brought pepperoni and margarita," Theo announced, carefully carrying the smaller box while Vincent balanced the larger one. Ellie opened the door, wearing a small apron that was too small for her. "We're making cookies," she explained, pointing to the kitchen where Sarah was mixing dough in a large bowl, with Sam watching from his high chair. The sweet aroma of vanilla and cinnamon mixed with the smell of tomato sauce and melted cheese. Vincent placed the pizzas on the table, while Theo ran to see the cookies being formed. "I needed to bring something to drink," Vincent said, pulling a bottle of grape juice from the bag. "For the kids," he added, before revealing a bottle of wine. "And maybe for the adults," Sarah smiled, wiping her hands on her apron. "Sounds perfect." Dinner was simple and cheerful. The children ate pizza and talked about school, cartoons, and grand plans to build the world's largest block castle the next day. Vincent and Sarah drank wine from simple glasses, exchanging comments about Ellie's progress at school, a new book Sarah had recommended to a customer, and the small achievements that marked her gradual recovery. After the meal, the cookies came out of the oven, a bit lopsided and imprecisely shaped, the result of the children's enthusiastic help. The aroma filled the house, provoking exclamations of pleasure. "I think these are the best cookies in the world," Theo declared with authority, biting into a still warm one. "Careful not to burn your tongue," Vincent warned, smiling. While the children shared the cookies and the rapidly melting ice cream, Vincent felt a strange sense of peace. There, in that modest kitchen, with simple furniture and mismatched plates, he felt more at home than in his own luxurious apartment. There was an authenticity in the laughter, in the unpretentious conversations, in the small gestures of care. "More wine," he offered Sarah, noticing her empty glass. "Please," she held out her glass, watching him fill it. "You know, it's been so long since I've had a night like this, quiet, with good food and—" She hesitated. "Good company." Vincent felt a warmth in his chest that wasn't just from the wine. "Camille too." The children asked to watch a movie on the small television in the living room. With the adults agreeing, they settled on the rug with pillows and the last of the cookies, while a colorful animation filled the screen. At the kitchen table, Vincent and Sarah remained, the wine bottle now half empty, the conversation flowing more easily. He told her about his week at work, about how he was trying to delegate more responsibilities, to spend more time with Theo. She talked about an interesting customer at the bookstore, an elderly man looking for specific books about constellations. "Have you always loved books?" Vincent asked, genuinely curious. "Always," Sarah confirmed, a nostalgic glint in her eyes. "In fact, I majored in literature in college. I worked as an assistant editor before—" Her voice trailed off, her gaze becoming distant. "Before." Sarah took a deep breath, swirling the wine in her glass. "Before everything changed." She looked at Vincent, something new in her expression. "So I never told you how we ended up on the streets, did I?" Vincent sensed the seriousness of the moment. He placed his glass on the table, giving her his full attention. "No, you haven't." Sarah glanced quickly into the living room, where the children were absorbed in the movie, Sam already dozing in Ellie's lap. 3 years ago, I was married, working at a small but respectable publishing house, and we lived in a modest apartment on the east side. Robert, my husband, was a civil engineer. He worked in construction, mostly commercial buildings. Vincent nodded, encouraging her to continue. Robert was meticulous, always concerned with safety. When he started working on the construction of the Harmon business complex, he noticed problems with the scaffolding. He reported it to the supervisors, insisted that the structures needed to be reinforced. Vincent's stomach knotted at the sound of his company's name. "No one wanted to listen," Sarah continued, her voice now lower. There were tight deadlines, pressure to deliver the project quickly. They told him to keep working, that everything was within standards. Vincent felt the blood run cold in his veins. He was beginning to see where the story was headed, and something inside him screamed for her to stop. But he couldn't, he shouldn't interrupt. So on the third day after he made the complaint, the scaffolding collapsed. Robert was on the 8th floor. Sarah looked at the wine, not at Vincent. They said it was instant, that he didn't suffer, as if that were any consolation. The room seemed to have suddenly grown colder. Vincent wanted to say something, anything, but his throat was as dry as paper. The construction company denied responsibility. They said it was human error, that he didn't follow protocols. Lies. The bitterness in her voice was palpable. "We filed a lawsuit, of course. There was evidence, photos Robert had taken of the problems, emails he sent reporting the risks." "What happened?" Vincent managed to ask, his voice almost a whisper. "Harmon Corporation has good lawyers." Sarah gave a humorless smile. "Very good ones. The case dragged on. The legal costs ate up our savings. I was pregnant with Sam, on maternity leave, living only on Robert's insurance, which barely covered the rent." Vincent felt nauseous. He vaguely remembered this case, a regrettable accident, his lawyers had said. Situation contained, risk of bad publicity minimized. "I lost my job when the publishing house closed, 2 months after the accident. I tried to find another, but with a young daughter and pregnant, well, it's not the profile many employers are looking for." Sarah took a sip of wine, as if gathering strength. "When Sam was born, our money was running out. The lawsuit was still ongoing, but bills don't wait for court decisions. I got some freelance work, but it wasn't enough. We started falling behind on rent." Vincent closed his eyes for a moment. He knew what was coming next. "Then we got the news. The building where we lived had been bought. All tenants had to be out in 60 days. The new owner planned to demolish everything and build luxury apartments. Who bought the building? Vincent asked, though he already knew the answer. Harmon Development Group. Sarah looked directly into his eyes. Your company, Vincent. The silence that followed was broken only by the low sound of the television in the adjacent room. We couldn't find another place. Prices had gone up, and no one wanted to rent to an unemployed single mother with 2 small children. When the deadline was up, we were evicted. The rest, well, you can imagine the rest. Vincent felt as if he had been punched in the stomach. His mind was spinning, trying to process what he had just heard. The coincidences were too brutal to be ignored. Sarah, he began, not knowing how to continue. You're Vincent Harmon, aren't you? The voice didn't come from Sarah, but from behind him. Vincent turned to find Ellie standing in the kitchen doorway. Her big eyes were fixed on him, a painful understanding dawning on her young face. Ellie, Sarah stood up, surprised. I thought you were watching the movie. Sam fell asleep. I came to get some water. The girl didn't take her eyes off Vincent. It's you, isn't it? The owner of Harmon, the man with the big buildings. Vincent swallowed hard. Yes, Ellie, I'm the owner of the company. The girl's expression changed. Recognition gave way to confusion, then to hurt, and finally to something that broke Vincent's heart. Betrayal. You. Her small voice trembled. Did you know who we were when you found me? No, Ellie, I swear I didn't, Vincent replied quickly. I had no idea. You took my dad from me. The words came out like sharp knives. And then you took our home. Theo appeared behind Ellie, drawn by the voices. What's going on? He asked, looking confusedly from Ellie to his father. Your dad is the bad man, Ellie said, tears starting to stream down her face. The man who made my dad die and threw us on the street. Ellie, Sarah moved toward her daughter, but the girl backed away. Hey, it's true, her voice rose, waking Sam in the living room with a startled cry. You always said it was his company, that they didn't care, that they lied. Vincent stood up, a slow, uncertain movement. Ellie, please, let me explain. You took my dad and my home from me. Ellie took another step back, the tears now falling freely. And then you pretended to be nice. Why? Theo looked at his father, completely lost. Dad, what is she talking about? Vincent tried to find words, any word that could fix what was shattering before him. But how to explain to a 5-year-old about corporations, limited liability, decisions made by subordinates, development projects approved without his direct knowledge? How to explain that, yes, his name was on all those papers, on all those decisions, even if he was miles away, in meetings about other matters, completely oblivious to the lives being destroyed. Ellie, His voice failed. For the first time in years, Vincent Harmon, the man who always had the right answers, was completely speechless. Sarah picked up Sam, who was still crying, trying to calm him. Ellie, let's talk about this calmly, she tried. I'm sure Mr. Harmon didn't know. Did you know? Ellie turned to her mother, her eyes full of pain and confusion. Did you know who he was when he gave us this house? No, sweetie, I didn't know. And now that you know. The question hung in the air, heavy and impossible. Theo approached Ellie, touching her arm shyly. Ellie, my dad wouldn't do something bad on purpose. He's good. Ellie looked at her friend, the hurt giving way to a deep sadness. Your dad has you and a big house and a job. She wiped her tears with her sleeve. My dad is dead, and we had nothing because of him. Vincent took a step toward the girl, but she backed away, positioning herself behind her mother. Ellie, please, I don't want you here anymore. Her voice was low but firm. I don't want your presence. I don't want your house. I don't want anything from you. The silence that followed was dense, almost palpable. Sam was still whimpering, frightened by the tension. Theo looked at his father, expecting him to fix everything, as he always did. But Vincent had no fix for this. He had no words, no solutions, no strategies. All he had was the raw truth reflected in the hurt eyes of a child. I think we should go, he said finally, his voice hoarse. But, Dad, the movie. Theo protested. No, Theo. We need to go now. Vincent picked up his coat, moving as if in a trance. Sarah followed him to the door, Sam still in her arms. "Vincent, I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have said anything. Not like this." "You did nothing wrong," he replied, unable to look her in the eye. The truth would have come out anyway. "What happens now?" she asked, concern evident in her voice. Vincent finally met her eyes. "I don't know. I really don't know." He called Theo, who came reluctantly, looking back at Ellie standing in the middle of the room, small and hurt and furious. "Bye, Ellie," Theo said, his voice full of confusion. Ellie didn't answer. In the car, Theo remained silent for several minutes before finally asking, "Dad?" What did Ellie mean? "Did you do something bad to her, Dad?" Vincent gripped the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. "It's complicated, Theo. But you wouldn't hurt anyone, right? You always say we should be nice to people." The innocence in his son's voice was like a knife twisting in Vincent's chest. "So sometimes," he began, choosing his words carefully, "people do bad things without realizing it, or they let bad things happen because they weren't paying attention. Like when you lost me in the park." Vincent felt tears threatening to fall. "Yes, son, something like that, only much, much worse." The rest of the drive was in silence. When they got home, Theo went straight to his room, without the usual request for stories or a goodnight kiss. Vincent was left alone in the living room, an untouched bottle of whiskey on the table before him. He didn't even deserve that comfort. The image of Ellie, her accusing eyes, her voice trembling with hurt, wouldn't leave him. How could he not have seen? How could he have been so blind, so disconnected from the consequences of his actions? How many other Ellies were out there, indirect victims of his business decisions, of his relentless pursuit of efficiency and profit, of his ability to delegate not just tasks, but also moral responsibilities. For the first time in his adult life, Vincent Harmon cried. He cried for the father Ellie had lost, for the home her family had lost, for the innocence he himself had lost that night. And he cried because, finally, he understood the true cost of his lost humanity. The days following the dinner were the darkest Vincent had ever lived. The silence in his apartment was deafening. Theo was quiet, confused, asking questions Vincent didn't know how to answer completely. How do you explain corporate responsibility, institutional negligence, and gentrification to a 5-year-old? On Monday, Vincent arrived at the office earlier than usual. His assistant, Claire, noticed something different in his demeanor, but knew better than to ask. He locked himself in his office and did what he should have done years ago. He started to actually read the reports, the lawsuits, the complaints, not the versions filtered by lawyers and public relations, but the original documents. The case of Robert Eero, Sarah's husband, was just one of dozens. Inevitable accidents, necessary layoffs, strategic evictions. Each folder represented affected lives, broken families, altered futures, and everything led directly or indirectly to his desk, to his signature, to his negligence in questioning, in verifying, in caring. At 10 in the morning, he called an emergency meeting with the entire board. "Something is very wrong with the way we operate," he began without preamble. And as of today, that changes. The faces around the table ranged from surprise to discomfort. Mark, his CFO, was the first to react. "Vincent, if this is about the last quarter's balance sheet..." "No, Mark. It's about the moral balance sheet of the last 15 years. Vincent placed a stack of red folders on the table, the internal code for closed legal cases. "These are cases we won, that our lawyers managed to get dismissed, reduced to minimal settlements, or postponed until the victims gave up." His voice was firm, but there was an underlying pain that no one in the room had ever heard. "I want them all reopened, all reassessed, every person affected properly compensated." A stunned silence followed. It was Christine, the head of legal team, who finally spoke. "Vincent, this is impractical. Some of these cases are years old. Legally, they are closed, and the financial impact would be devastating," Vincent completed. "Like losing a father, a home, a dignified life." No one answered. "I'm not asking, Christine. I'm ordering. Find a legal way." Create private compensation funds if necessary, but find these people and compensate them properly. The following hours were tense. Some directors tried to argue, present numbers, talk about shareholders and fiduciary duties. Vincent listened to it all with a calmness that surprised even himself. When everyone was done, he simply said, "I understand the concerns. I understand the impact, but this is not a discussion, it's a redirection. Anyone who can't or won't follow this new path is free to leave." No one left. In the following weeks, Vincent immersed himself in the work he should have been doing from the beginning. A complete review of safety protocols on all construction sites, an independent audit of labor practices, a reassessment of every real estate project with a focus on community impact. Robert's case was the first to be resolved. Vincent personally instructed his lawyers to offer a substantial compensation to the family, not as charity, but as an admission of guilt and responsibility. In addition, he created an educational fund for Ellie and Sam, and a support fund for other families affected by similar accidents. The shareholders complained when the quarter's profits plummeted. Vincent weathered the storm with a quiet determination. "We are correcting historical mistakes," he explained at the annual meeting, "and building a company that can grow without destroying lives in the process." Some investors left, others, surprisingly, stayed, attracted by the vision of genuine corporate responsibility that Vincent now presented. A month after the fateful dinner, Vincent parked his car in front of the house he had rented for Sarah and her children. He sat there for almost half an hour, gathering courage. He hadn't spoken to them since that night. He had respected Ellie's request for distance, but the pain of the separation consumed him. Finally, he took a deep breath and got out of the car. The house looked the same, but there were new flowers in the small front garden. He approached the door, his heart pounding in his chest. He rang the bell and waited, his hands sweating. It was Sarah who answered, with Sam in her arms. She looked surprised, but not hostile. "Vincent," she said simply. "Hi, Sarah. Sorry to show up unannounced. I'd like to talk, if possible." She hesitated, looking back into the house. "Ellie's at school," she informed him, as if guessing his concern. "Come in." The living room was different, more welcoming, more established. Small personal touches everywhere, photos in simple frames, Ellie's drawings on the walls, Sam's toys organized in colorful boxes. A real home. "Thank you for having me," Vincent said, remaining standing even when Sarah indicated the sofa. "I received the documents," she said, adjusting Sam, who was playing with her hair. "The settlement, the fund for the children. Why now, Vincent?" He took a deep breath. "Because now I know. Not just about your case, but about all the others. About what my company became while I was too busy counting profits to see the human cost." Sarah looked at him for a long time, as if assessing his sincerity. "What do you want, exactly?" "To repair what I can, not just with money, though that's the least I can offer. I want to change the way we do business. I want other families not to go through what yours went through." She nodded slowly. "And Ellie, what do you want from her?" Vincent felt a lump in his throat. "I want her to know that I'm sorry, deeply. That I'm doing everything I can to fix a system that allowed her father to die, that allowed you to lose your home." He swallowed hard. "But I know she may never forgive me, and I understand that." Sarah put Sam on the floor, where he immediately started crawling towards his toys. "She's hurt, Vincent, confused. In her child's mind, she had finally found good people, security, friendship. And then she found out it all came from the same hands that took her father and her home." "I know," he murmured. "I know it's too complicated for a child to understand. Maybe for anyone." They were silent for a moment, only the sound of Sam playing filling the room. "Theo misses her," Vincent said finally. "She misses him too," Sarah admitted. "She cries at night sometimes, but she's too hurt to admit it." Vincent took an envelope from his pocket. "Could you give this to her?" "Please." Sarah took the envelope, hesitant. "What is it?" "Just a note. Some words I needed to say to her." Sarah nodded, placing the envelope on the table. "I'll give it to her, but I can't promise she'll answer." I understand. Vincent moved toward the door. Thank you, Sarah, for everything. She walked him to the exit. What you did, she said before he left, changing policies, compensating families, creating support funds, that's important, Vincent. Important for many people besides us. It's the least I can do. Maybe. But it's more than most would do in your place. In the car, Vincent looked one last time at the house before driving off. He knew the note he had left was too simple for the magnitude of the pain. Just 5 words. I still want you to be happy. It didn't ask for forgiveness. It didn't offer excuses. It just expressed the sincere wish that, despite everything he had done, Ellie could find joy in her life. As he drove back to the office, where more red folders awaited him, Vincent knew that the real repair had just begun. The road would be long. Some damages could never be completely fixed. Some wounds would never fully heal. But for the first time in his adult life, he was doing what was right, not because it was profitable or strategic or good publicity, but simply because it was right. The real change, Vincent understood, began there. Not in grand public gestures or corporate policies, but in that intimate decision to face the truth about himself and the impact of his actions on the world. And that, perhaps, was the hardest and most important change of all. Vincent's routine had found a new rhythm. At the office, he led profound changes in the company, facing resistance with a quiet determination that surprised even the most skeptical directors. At home, he dedicated himself to being the father Theo deserved, present, attentive, patient. But there was an empty space in their lives, the absence of a girl with eyes too old for her age. On a Sunday night, while they were tidying up the room before bed, Theo finally asked the question he had been holding back for weeks. Dad, why don't we visit Ellie anymore? Vincent stopped what he was doing, his hand frozen on a stuffed dinosaur. He sat on the edge of the bed and invited his son to join him. Remember that night at Ellie's house when she got upset? Theo nodded, his face taking on an unusual seriousness. She's mad at you because of her dad. Yes. Vincent took a deep breath. And she has every right to be. Did you hurt her dad? The question, so direct, made Vincent swallow hard. My company made mistakes, Theo. Serious mistakes. One of those mistakes caused Ellie's dad to get hurt very badly, so badly that he didn't survive. Theo's eyes widened, trying to comprehend the weight of those words. Was it on purpose? No, son. It was because of carelessness, for not paying enough attention, for putting profit and deadlines above people's safety. Vincent chose words a child could understand, without diminishing the gravity of the situation. And then, when Ellie's mom needed help, my company didn't help. In fact, we made their situation worse. But you didn't know, right? The question was laden with hope, as if Theo needed to believe in his father's innocence. Vincent felt the weight of his son's expectation. I didn't know specifically about Ellie's dad, but I should have known what was happening in my company. It was my job to know. When you're the boss, you're responsible for everything, even if you didn't do it directly. Theo thought for a moment, processing. Is it like when the teacher makes a student a monitor? If there's a mess, the monitor also gets in trouble, even if they didn't make the mess. Vincent smiled slightly, touched by the simple but accurate analogy. Exactly. I was the monitor who wasn't paying attention, and now Ellie is very angry. Yes, and she has every right to be, but you're trying to fix it, right? Like when you fixed my train when I broke it. Vincent ran his hand through his son's hair. I'm trying, Theo, but some things can't be completely fixed. Ellie's dad isn't coming back no matter what I do. So I need to respect her time, her pain. But I miss her, Theo said, his voice small. She's my best friend. Vincent hugged his son, feeling the weight of those simple words. I know, and I'm sure she misses you too. Theo pulled away from the hug, looking at his father with childish determination. Can we visit, just to say hi? I want to talk to her. Vincent hesitated. Sarah had given his note to Ellie, but there had been no response. Maybe it was too soon, or maybe... We can try, he decided. But we need to be prepared if she still doesn't want to see us. Okay? Theo nodded, hope lighting up his face. Can I bring my new dragon game? She would like it. You can. We'll try tomorrow after school. Throughout the next day, Vincent could barely concentrate on work. For the first time in his career, he left early without giving anyone an explanation. At 3 in the afternoon, he waited anxiously at the school gate. Theo came running out, clutching the board game to his chest. "Let's go, Dad. Let's go." On the way, Vincent tried to prepare his son, explaining that Ellie might not want to see them, that they had to respect her decision. Theo listened with an unusual seriousness for his age. "I'm going to tell her you're changing," he insisted. "You're different now, even with me. More present." The word hit Vincent deeply. Present. It was what he was trying to be now, truly present in his life, his company, his relationships. When they arrived at Ellie's house, Vincent felt his heart race. He parked, took a deep breath, and exchanged a look with Theo before ringing the bell. It was Ellie who answered. Her eyes registered surprise, contained joy at seeing Theo, hesitation at seeing Vincent. "Hi, Ellie," Theo stepped forward, excited. "I brought a new game. It has dragons and treasures and—" "Theo," Vincent interrupted gently, "let's give Ellie a minute." Vincent knelt to be at her height. "Hi, Ellie. Sorry to show up like this. We'll understand if you don't want to see us right now. We just wanted to say hi and that we miss you." Ellie bit her lip, her dark eyes assessing them. "My mum's not here. She's at work. Sam's at daycare. We can come back another time when—" "I got your note," Ellie interrupted, her voice low but firm. "What did it say?" Theo asked, curious. "That he still wants me to be happy," she replied, without taking her eyes off Vincent. A silence settled, laden with possibilities. "Please, Ellie," Theo pleaded, stepping forward. "Give my dad a chance. He's changing. He's different now, even with me. He comes home earlier. He plays with me. He picks me up from school every day. He's trying really hard." Ellie looked at her friend, then at Vincent, as if trying to read the truth in their faces. "Is it true you're changing your company?" she asked Vincent directly. "Yes," he replied, surprised by the mature question. "I'm doing everything I can to fix the mistakes and make sure they don't happen again. My mum said you sent money." "A lot of money." "The money doesn't bring your dad back, I know, but I hope it helps you and your mum have a better life." Ellie considered this for a long moment. Vincent waited, respecting her time. Then, to his surprise, the girl opened the door wider. "Do you want to come in? I can make lemonade. My mom taught me." Theo's face instantly lit up. Vincent felt a profound relief wash over him. "We'd love to," he replied. In the kitchen, Ellie prepared lemonade with the competence of someone used to taking care of herself. Vincent offered to help, but she politely declined, focused on her task. While the children set up the game in the living room, Vincent watched, amazed at the childish capacity to forgive, to start over. "Do you want to play too?" Ellie asked, surprising him with the invitation. "Sure, if you'll teach me the rules." During the afternoon, something magical happened. The laughter returned. Theo and Ellie resumed their friendship, as if the time apart had been just a bad dream. Vincent participated when invited, but often just watched, grateful to witness the healing happening before his eyes. When Sarah arrived from work, she found the three of them on the living room rug, surrounded by game pieces and colorful drawings. "Hello," she said, surprised but not displeased. "Hi, Mom." Ellie ran to hug her. "Theo brought a new game, and I made lemonade all by myself." Sarah looked at Vincent, a silent question in her eyes. "I hope it's okay," he said, standing up. Theo really wanted to see Ellie, and "It's okay," Sarah assured him. "Stay for dinner if you like." During dinner, Theo talked enthusiastically about his school. Suddenly, he looked at his father. "Dad, could Ellie go to my school?" Before Vincent could answer, Ellie said, "My mom already enrolled me in a school near here. But ours has a huge playground and art classes every day." Vincent exchanged glances with Sarah. "It's a possibility," he said cautiously. "If Ellie and her mom are interested, I can check if there are any spots." "It would be closer to my work," Sarah considered. "And Ellie always mentions how Theo describes his school." In the following weeks, a new routine was established. Ellie was transferred to Theo's school, where she quickly adapted. Sarah and Vincent shared transportation and childcare responsibilities. The families began to meet regularly for dinners and weekend outings. Ellie's hurt didn't completely disappear. There were days when her eyes still showed a trace of pain when she looked at Vincent. But she had forgiven, not so much for the man, but because she loved Theo like a brother and didn't want to lose the joy their friendship brought. For Vincent, every smile from Ellie, every time she voluntarily spoke to him, was an unexpected gift. He wasn't seeking absolution. He knew some debts can never be fully paid, but he sought reparation and the chance to build something new on the rubble of the past. On a sunny Sunday, as he watched the children playing in the park, Theo teaching Ellie how to skate, Sam taking his first steps supported by a stroller, Vincent realized he had found something all his money and power could never buy: a second chance. An opportunity to live with purpose, with awareness, with true human connection. It was the beginning of a new story, a story written not with contracts and financial balance sheets, but with respect, empathy, and love. A story where the value of a life was not measured by its cost or utility, but by its unrepeatable presence in the world. And for a man who had spent so much time lost in the abstractions of corporate power, that was the most valuable lesson of all. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next ones. Leave a like because it helps this story get recommended to more people. See you in the next story.